You wake up tomorrow. You grab your keys. You turn the ignition. Nothing. Not because your car is old. Not because the battery is weak. But because the fuel network that powers your life just stopped. And every gas station you pass is dry. Not for a few days, for good. And over the next 72 hours, you watch the American routine collapse hour by hour. Hour 1. You check your phone and see the same message everywhere. No fuel deliveries. You assume it's a glitch. You drive to the nearest station anyway. Plastic bags are taped over the pumps. You try the next one. Same thing. You tell yourself, they'll fix it by lunch. But something tightens in your chest because suddenly, you don't know how you're getting to work, how your kids get to school, how you'll pick up groceries, how you live in a country built on motion. Hour 6. You realize this isn't just your tank. You can't simply reroute fuel if refineries can't ship, pipelines don't move product, trucks don't roll, and terminals don't refill. The whole system runs like a heartbeat. You never notice it until it stops. And when it stops, your suburb doesn't feel like freedom anymore. It feels like an island. Hour 12. The first changes are quiet, almost polite. The roads get strange, not empty, uneven. Some people burn their last gallons like nothing's changed. Others creep along, chasing rumors. You start doing math you never had to do. Miles left, which errands matter, who you can't reach. You stare at your driveway and realize your car isn't transportation now. It's storage. A heavy, silent box. Day 2. You walk into a big box store expecting normal. You don't find it. Carts are piled with bottled water, shelf-stable food, diapers, pet food, batteries. Polite smiles start turning into sharp looks. You feel your own grip tighten on the cart handle, because you know what you're really buying isn't groceries. You're buying time. Day 3. The shelves don't just look picked over. They look rearranged by scarcity. Deliveries that used to arrive overnight don't arrive at all, because trucks need diesel, drivers need routes, and warehouses need steady flow. People call it supply chain disruption. You experience it as something simpler. You can't replace what you used today. Day 7. Your neighborhood changes its language. People stop asking, "Where did you get it?" and start asking, "How much do you have?" You hear offers. You hear trades. You see strangers walking, biking, pulling wagons down roads designed for SUVs. And you realize something that feels obvious too late. Your suburb was never built for survival. It was built for convenience. And just when you think the first week is the worst part, you notice something darker. It isn't only fuel that's gone. It's the assumption that tomorrow will be normal. Next, you're going to see what happens when cities run out of patience and the countryside runs out of trust. By the start of the first month, you stop calling it a disruption. You call it your life. You wake up each morning and listen before you move. You listen for trucks that never come. You listen for sirens that come too often. You check your supplies the way you used to check your bank app. You count meals, you count water, you count the distance to the nearest family member, and you realize distance is a wall now. If you live in a city, you feel the change first and hardest. You can't drive out, and you can't rely on deliveries. Elevators fail more often. Building systems run on backup plans that were never meant to last. Stores open late, close early, and then stop opening at all. You stand in long lines for basics, and you learn a brutal lesson. A line is not a guarantee. Some days, the line ends with a handwritten sign, "Out," and people walking away in silence. If you live in the suburbs, you get trapped in a different way. Your job is too far to walk. Your kid's school is closed or reduced to something almost symbolic. Your neighbors are close enough to see, but not close enough to trust. You start noticing who has a generator, who has a deep pantry, who has tools. You also notice who looks hungry, and you realize how quickly good manners fade when everyone is tired. Hospitals keep running, but you can see what it costs. They need power, oxygen, clean water, sterile supplies, and steady deliveries. Ambulances can't operate like they used to. Care shifts into triage. Rules change. Limits appear. You watch doctors and nurses do more with less, and you finally understand something most people never think about. Modern medicine runs on modern logistics. Then the countryside changes too. You assume farms will save everyone because farms grow food. But you learn the missing link is fuel. Tractors, combines, irrigation pumps, feed deliveries, fertilizer deliveries. None of it works at scale without energy. Some farmers keep planting with whatever they can scrape together. Others stop because they can't get inputs, can't move the harvest, and can't protect what they store. People leave cities and arrive in rural areas with backpacks and big hopes. Locals tighten up because they know one farm can't feed 100 extra families. Around this time, you start hearing about fuel controls, priority lists, essential use. You hear the remaining fuel is being routed to emergency services and the military. You see checkpoints on key roads. You see official vehicles moving while everyone else walks. And you feel a mix of relief and anger. Relief because someone is still organizing something. Anger because you aren't on the list. As the weeks pass, cities become traps. Not because anyone locks the gates, but because leaving takes energy you don't have. You can't carry enough water for long distances. You can't carry enough food. You can't move fast. And you can't be sure what you'll find if you do leave. You start hearing the same sentence from different mouths. If you're going to go, go now. But most people can't. So you stay, you adapt, and you discover the hardest part isn't discomfort. The hardest part is watching the future shrink down to the size of the next meal. A year passes, and you stop waiting for the trucks to come back. You stop scanning the news for a fix. You accept the new rule. If it can't be repaired by hand, if it can't be powered by wind, water, wood, or muscle, it becomes a museum piece. Cars are still everywhere, parked along curbs and driveways like statues. But they don't move. What moves are people, walking the same routes every day because distance has a price now. You watch the country reorganize itself around whatever still works. Towns with rivers do better because water can turn wheels and move small boats. Places near rail lines try to bring old tracks back to life, but rail needs steady maintenance and parts you can't always find. Coastal areas lean on small sailboats for local trade. Inland, the map shrinks. What used to be a 2-hour drive becomes a multi-day trip. You don't say, "I'll be there this afternoon." You say, "If the weather holds, I'll be there next week." Technology doesn't vanish. It collapses into layers. The top layer is rare and protected. Working solar panels, batteries, radios, spare circuit boards. Communities treat them like treasure, not because they're fancy, but because they mean light at night and a way to share information. The middle layer is practical. Hand tools, bicycles, sewing machines, pumps, mills, and improvised generators that run on whatever fuel people can still make in small amounts. The bottom layer is the backbone, animals and human labor. And then comes the shift everyone feels in their gut. Animals return as machines. At first, it's a few goats and chickens in backyards. Then you see carts. Then you see teams pulling loads down streets that were built for cars. A horse stops being a hobby. A horse becomes transport, farm power, and a kind of insurance for your food supply. People joke, a horse costs more than a Ferrari now, and you understand exactly what they mean. A Ferrari is useless without fuel and parts. A healthy horse can work every day and make more horses. Value changes when the system changes. You watch a great reset happen without a meeting or a vote. Not a slogan, an avalanche. People salvage what they can from the old world. Neighborhoods strip abandoned buildings for lumber, wire, glass, fixtures. Mechanics become the most respected people in town, not because they can tune an engine, but because they can keep pumps, mills, and tools alive. Teachers stop obsessing over test prep and start teaching what keeps families fed: growing food, preserving food, repairing clothing, basic medicine, safe water, practical math. Money still exists, but it doesn't feel like it used to. You can't eat a number on a screen. You can't heat a home with a promise. Trade turns local. Work turns physical. Reputation becomes currency. If you're known as someone who shares and fixes, people pull you into the circle. If you're known as someone who takes and disappears, doors close fast. Old habits break too. People stop wasting packaging because there's no endless supply of replacements. People stop buying disposable goods because disposable becomes a luxury. Homes change. Families move closer together. Empty office buildings turn into workshops and storage. Law enforcement becomes less about tickets and more about keeping peace at the market, in the water line, and at the mill. And in the middle of all of it, you notice something quiet and unsettling. You're still living in a country that speaks English and, in many places, still flies the same flag, but it's running on a different clock. The old world ran on speed. This one runs on seasons. And once you learn that rhythm, you can feel the next question coming. Not how we go back, but how we survive long enough to build forward. 50 years later, you still remember the day the pumps went silent, but you don't live inside that memory anymore. You wake with the sun because your town runs on daylight, not deadlines. You step outside and hear animals, tools, and voices, not traffic. You look around and see a country that's greener than it used to be, because less is burned and less is wasted. But you also see a country that's poorer in a way your grandparents would recognize. Fewer choices, fewer backups, and a life where every comfort has a cost you can feel in your arms and in your hours. You learn that recovery didn't mean going back. We rebuilt, but we rebuilt smaller. You don't expect strawberries in winter because the market sells what grows nearby and what can be stored safely. You don't expect tomorrow delivery because shipping is slower and more local. Electricity still exists in many places, but it comes from small sources: solar, wind, water, and community generators that run only when they're needed. You charge radios and lamps. You power a workshop. You don't power an entire lifestyle built around endless appliances. And when the power goes out, you don't panic. You light candles. You use hand pumps. You lean on neighbors who know what to do, because everyone does. You see the new American map in the way people trade. Big cities didn't vanish, but they changed. You watch them shrink and break into clusters that can feed themselves. Old parking lots became gardens and greenhouses. Rooftops gained water tanks. Stairwells started getting used again. Public buildings were rebuilt into clinics, schools, and storage. And a lot of people chose smaller towns because distance still matters and local food still matters. Success doesn't mean square footage anymore. It means clean water, healthy soil, and a pantry that can carry you through winter. You also learn what wealth looks like now, and you learn to respect it. Land that holds moisture, seeds that grow in your climate, skills that don't expire, carpentry, welding, animal care, solid medical training, water sanitation. Kids learn to repair bikes before they learn to drive, because bikes still work when parts are scarce. Schools teach practical science, not just theory, because we need people who can maintain batteries, build safe stoves, test water, and keep small grids stable. There are still computers in some places, but they're treated like instruments, not toys. You feel the hardest truth when you look at your own budget. You spend less on entertainment and more on basics. You spend more hours for the same outcome. You own fewer things, but you maintain what you have. A broken tool is a real problem, not an excuse to buy a new one. A good pair of boots can be worth weeks of pay. A healthy work animal remains one of the most valuable assets you can own, because it turns effort into food and transport. And even when life is more stable, you stay careful, because you remember how thin the margin can be. And yet, when you walk through town at dusk, you feel something you didn't expect. The stars are brighter than you remember because the sky is darker. Music comes from porches instead of speakers behind glass. You know your neighbors because you have to. You don't have the old American dream, the one built on speed and endless supply. But you have a different dream now. A slower life, cleaner land, and a future your kids can understand, even if it's simpler, tougher and far less rich than the world we lost.